This is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hey there, Star Wars fans. Welcome to yet another episode. Surprisingly, one more episode
We're
of this
still
show.
here. Yeah, this is the last one.
I know, right? Sometimes it feels like that. Every week I'm always like, well, maybe this will be the last one. People will be like, you suck, go away. And here we are again. So as always...
Would that really stop us if they did?
No. Nope. Our mediocrity can never be stopped.
Yeah.
I'm Kyler.
I am Chris.
I'm Ross.
And, yeah. Here we go. Ross, I think you have some news for us today.
The newsiest news of the week.
We should have done that backwards again. Anyway, sorry, keep going. Just
throw Ross
it
off.
would have been appropriate for the theme.
Would it?
No,
Right.
See?
Oh, man.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Oh, well. We're only adequate.
Yeah. First up in the news this week is the set of books and comics and other reading materials that have been announced by Disney to be tie-ins leading up to episode 9. So they released a list of books a couple weeks ago, I think, at this point.
There's a ton of them.
It was like 20.
Yeah, it's 20-something.
Like
Dang.
The number that comes to my head is 26. I could be wrong on that, but it's in the 20s.
I was thinking 24, so somewhere in that ballpark.
20-something different books and
Well, give me a moment.
comics
I'm
and
counting.
things.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
A lot of this is, well, okay, first of all, it's all supposed to be in canon, above board, stuff that you will be able to pick up and read and get a little more insight into what you'll see in episode 9. Now, with that said, a significant portion of this is set to young adult and children's books.
I would say there's some tie-in. Because, like with The Force Awakens, the tie-in, they did the Shattered Empire stuff. Mm-hmm. That gave you basically nothing for Force Awakens. Right. Unless you wanted to go into Force Awakens with the knowledge that Poe was conceived at the celebration party on Endor.
I mean, come on.
Yeah,
I'm counting 21 on this list.
Okay, 21. Okay. But that was the only connection with those comics. And some of the other books were more or less, so I imagine it'll be more of the same.
Yeah. And one of them also on the list is the a visual dictionary of the behind the scenes stuff for ships and things. So I mean, you'll get canon, but it's not like
a novel, not more story.
Yeah. They did have, I think there was at least one line of Marvel comics. I think there might have been 2.
Yeah, they've so far they've done something like that with Force Awakens and Last Jedi, where they're here's a little mini series of comics to sort of get you hyped.
Yeah.
They did, that was the Shattered Empire. Then they did a DJ single issue.
Mm-hmm. They did the Phasma.
They did Phasma as well, which was quite good.
It was. I got around to reading that not too long ago. That was pretty solid.
And it made the comic, which I read before the Phasma book, made me like the book better. I think if I had just read the book, it would have been more lackluster than it was. Huh. But knowing the comic, too, I was like, oh, that comic is actually even cooler than I thought based on what you learned in the book. But anyway, I'm excited for a lot of these books, though.
Yeah, they should be interesting.
I like the cover of this, The Art of Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, doesn't that look good? Mm-hmm.
Ooh, my sister will get that. She has them for the first 2, so she'll get that one, too.
I'd say that one and the visual dictionary, I think, are already on my list of things to buy. But you'll be able to tell all of these when you go to buy them by... on the title of the book up at the top, there's always a Road to Rise of Skywalker or something like that title. And so it's the same across all the books, so you'll know exactly which ones we're talking about when you see them. And I don't remember a release date on any of the first ones. Have they announced that?
Some of them are due to come out this fall or this summer, I think, the first ones.
Well, the visual dictionary is set for 12/20/2019. So just before. Same thing with the Art of.
I want to say a couple of them are coming in August or September.
We've got some October.
And then there's a bunch that come in October and November, and then a few in December.
Decembers.
So it's sort of those last few months before the movie, they start to stagger.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're timing a lot of this with Force Friday in October. And then they're timing some of it as well with the release of Disney Plus and The Mandalorian in November.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a couple of dates from Disney that they're sort of trying to hype up and time a big avalanche of merchandise at you on certain dates.
Yep. So be on the lookout for those.
The earliest I'm seeing on this list is October. I'm not seeing anything earlier.
It's possible I was looking at other Star Wars books that are releasing
that aren't
this year,
necessarily explicitly
but they're
part
not
of the
part of
journey
this line.
to
I think that's what it
episode
was,
9.
because there was one Alphabet Squadron that is about basically Black Squadron that we see, like Poe's Squadron, because he has an X-Wing, one of them has an A-Wing, one of them has a Y-Wing or something like that, but we don't really see much of it. Mm-hmm. But technically it's there in canon. So there's like a book about them doing their thing. And I think that one is like in June or July or something. I was looking at my list of Star Wars stuff I need to purchase the other day.
So next, we have some leaks to talk about.
Dun, dun,
some
dun.
very quick leaks. Now, was this from like something from Star Wars Celebration that we didn't get to see?
I don't know, because the footage doesn't look like a Star Wars Celebration like panel.
The one that I saw...
It looks like a smaller room.
Well, and the one that I saw was someone like recording
maybe a
YouTube video on their phone.
Yeah.
But,
there's one that okay, so tell them what it is. Tell them what it is first.
So we have more leaked footage from The Mandalorian. So we had
and it looks so good.
We had a trailer, the one trailer that was supposed to be exclusive for Star Wars Celebration, people leaked.
That went on YouTube about 30 seconds later.
I was going to say that was inevitable. They had to know that.
Especially where Jon Favreau didn't even say anything until after it was up.
Yeah.
So
at that point, it's like, why not put? Because they still haven't put out an official trailer for it. It's like, it's gonna be out there. Just do it. Whatever.
Yeah. The special thing is people at Star Wars Celebration got it a week early. Let's let the rest of us see it. Anyway, no, we have more leaked footage from Mandalorian.
Yeah, this was like a week and a half later, something like that. New footage popped up on YouTube.
Yeah, stuff that was not in the trailer.
Yeah, that was not what was shown at Star Wars Celebration. At least as far as we can tell. It's not what was shown at that panel at Star Wars Celebration. Shows some of the same footage, but some other different footage. There's a really cool shot of the Mandalorian and the girl whose name I can't remember, the Rebel Shock Trooper, ex-Rebel Shock Trooper, like scuffling over guns, like in the dirt.
The one that's being played by the like MMA fighter. Okay. Yeah.
They're like in a fight, it looks like, and they're tussling on the ground, and they end up drawing their guns and pointing them at each other in sort of like a little standoff. Yeah, looks kind of cool.
It was funny because the Mandalorian's on his back.
Yeah.
Normally when you have that...
Yeah, he's on his back looking up over and pointing his gun at her, and she's on her belly pointing her gun at him, like they both kind of draw at the same time. And after the scuffle, and it shows some other dialogue that he has. So we get to... He's not going to be Boba Fett where it's just... I get, one line this episode, 2 lines next epised, 1 line the after that, So we're going to get to hear him, and he sounds really cool. We hear also, I believe, Carl Weathers, the boss of the Bounty Hunter Guild, kind of giving some overall like, I need you to go get the MacGuffin from the MacGuffin guy, kind of a thing. But it looks really good. Yeah. Looks so good.
I was really impressed with the little bit of IG-88 that they did.
Yes!
Yes! My gosh.
His little spinny head looking around for the next person to kill and stuff.
Well, it was that, but also his torso was spinning, shooting people.
Yeah!
All around him.
Yeah. So, they've got IG-88 with his arms out holding guns, and his head is spinning around looking for targets, and then as soon as they find one, his torso just rotates to get the guns off and shooting at the right person a little bit faster. Looks really cool. I'm excited to see IG-88.
And I think it might have been the girl who's probably going to be Mandalorian's sidekick. It looked like she hit a stormtrooper in the face with some sort of stick and cracked
knocked the freaking face mask off the stormtrooper, shattered the front of his helmet. I'm super excited.
it's the visuals are a little bit different for Star Wars because you don't usually get that gritty with it.
But that's what I'm hoping for is that they're like, look, since this isn't going out for public TV or whatever, we can ramp it up just a little bit.
And as much as everyone thinks, Disney isn't actually afraid of doing a little bit more mature stuff. Anyway,
I'm way excited. It looks good.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. And this also looked like a trailer that we'll probably see soon. Yeah, hopefully.
I expect that we will see some combination of what was shown at Star Wars Celebration and this new leaked footage. And we'll put a link up in the episode description to this.
Yeah.
I expect we'll see some sort of hybrid of the two footages for some sort of trailer in the next, I'm going to say 2 months. It will be my guess. Because it's coming out in November. So I think we'll get like a teaser trailer in like 2 months, the end of July-ish.
It'd be odd to not have one at
there.
least 4 months before, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like end of July, beginning of August.
Frankly, with a
somewhere.
Star Wars property, it's kind of weird not to have one now, especially after that was a huge part of what crippled Solo.
Well, yeah, that's true. And then I think we'll see a big ramp up to it starting in September as they get ready for Force Friday and stuff like that. And like Force Friday, I think we'll see like a full trailer for it.
I don't know. I think they might be taking more the TV model with this because you don't really see trailers for TV shows.
Yeah, until a few
Not
weeks
as many,
before.
That's fair, but still.
So, and I think they're doing it episodically, so maybe they're just wholly lifting out the TV model.
Yeah.
Whereas these streaming services, you might want to think more in the terms of movies, but whatever.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I actually kind of like that better, though, that they're doing it like the TV model. I think it serves building tension better rather than just being like, well, these are 3 separate episodes, but just go ahead and watch, 4 hours worth here.
Yeah. It gives you a reason to keep your subscription rather than
that
everything
too
on your free month.
Yes.
So.
Kyler wouldn't know what that's like.
Yeah. Yep. All right. And so
How far are you on Game of Thrones, by the way?
Oh, I am... Okay, so... Have we talked about this on the show? I started binging Game of Thrones because it finally came to VidAngel, and I don't support pornography. So I wanted to watch
Having watched it without that,
yep,
good choice.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to finally do this VidAngel thing where I can watch it. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't really feel like I've lost much on the story.
No.
Having not seen, at this point, I'm guessing dozens of boobies.
Although if you don't get to hear Sandor Clegane swearing, then you're really losing.
Oh no, I only turned off like the nudity and sex stuff. I don't particularly care about the language because
the Hound
is hilarious.
If you don't have him swearing,
his lines are super dang funny. Especially when he's like, "I'm going to eat every chicken in this place if you don't shut your mouth." I'm like, "Yes." Anyway, so it's in the past probably month, and this is including like. I still watch Critical Role, which is like 4 hours a week of that, and binging Cheers with my wife, so that's like 2 or 3 hours a night. In the past probably 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks at this point, I am now on season 8, episode 3.
Oh, dang, you are almost caught up.
Yeah.
That is insane.
I'm trying desperately to get caught up for the finale.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
You still got your work cut out for you.
Yep.
So.
See, but my wife
Yeah.
does cosplay. So she, after the children are in bed and she's finally free of her tormentors, she goes and works on her cosplay. And so while she's off in another room sewing, I'm like, well, I can't watch Cheers without my wife because we're watching that together. So Game of Thrones it is, and then I'll have that going.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So the reason why that pertains is because...
Look, it's not actually a tangent. It's a tangent, guys.
It's slightly less.
it's a long segue. Because it has been announced...
That was my band's name in college.
Long segue.
Long segue.
Segue limo. That'd be nice. Stretch segue. All right. The game, it has been announced now it's only been confirmed one movie, but it's talked about the Game of Thrones creators doing their thing. So
their trilogy, yeah.
Yeah. Before there was a lot of rumors about whether they'd be doing a Disney Plus show or something like this.
Yeah.
But it has been actually said in the article that we have.
Because we announced this last week with the dates and everything. I believe it was last week.
The dates. The dates was the movies are coming out.
Yeah.
We didn't have any confirmation of whose movies.
Right. That's what I was saying. Is last week we said, hey, it's 2022, 24, and 26. We have 3 new Star Wars movies.
Yes.
Who's going to direct it? Well, a few days after our last show aired, they were like everybody suspected, it's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's David Benioff
it's
and
D&D.
D&D, yes.
The article did specify that they've only been confirmed for the first movie, but it's in a very trilogy-like release pattern.
Well, and they have said in the past that they were given a trilogy to do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
But there's also been talk about whether or not they're going to... Rian Johnson, I believe, has said that he is probably directing the first of his trilogy, but not necessarily hands-on directing all 3 movies.
Oh, thank heavens.
He's just composing all of them, which, might mean we get lower quality because he's easily the best filmmaker to have his hands on it since Lucas.
It might mean we get better quality, Chris.
We'll see. And this is my favorite part of this announcement is a week ago, you probably would have had all these people being like, oh, yay, this is great. And now, 1 week later, you've got all these people going, crap, no, we hate these people now.
So, Chris, do you want to explain why? Because we're going to the same place.
Episode 5 of Season 8 of Game of Thrones. If you have been anywhere near the internet in the last little while,
was terrible,
you are aware it was not well received.
It was not well received,
Yeah.
Important distinction.
There are some very valid reasons for that. There are some very stupid reasons for that. It bounces back and forth, and a lot of those are very subjective as well. You know, there's plenty that I'm like, oh, that didn't really bother me, but others that I'm like, that super bothered me. I can see why it wouldn't bother someone else, but that pissed me off. And then others where I'm just like, you know, I posted about this where I wanted to do my paper comparing Luke Skywalker and Khaleesi, and talking about how, no, the problem is that you're not paying attention to what these characters actually are, and you're idealizing them, and now you're upset when they're not ideal.
Yeah.
See, and I have not yet seen that episode, but again, I've been on the internet.
Yes.
So
hard to avoid.
I'm kind of aware of what's going on, and I'm not sure why anyone is surprised by this, because I've been looking at this entire series going, you know, I'm a historian. I've studied my fair share of insane, you know, power-hungry despots. She's been one from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, from the very start.
To be fair, the more I've looked at this since that initial rush, there are a lot of people that are specifically upset. Yeah, or who are specifically upset about Dany's actions. But there are a whole lot of people that are upset about a whole lot of other things. And even if the actions themselves make sense with the character, the setup and lead into it is still been extremely rushed is the main problem, I think. Is that they just haven't had time to flesh out any of this like they always did before. Because George R.R. Martin's writing approach has always been like Robert Jordan on steroids, where it's just like, yeah, I'm going to start writing this, and then I'm just going to kind of let it go wherever it wants, and these books, it's just going to keep expanding and let these characters go where they want and do what they want. And so it's very much this massively overgrown garden that he has just been meandering through entertainingly.
Yeah.
But now you've got D&D who are tasked with, okay, finish this up. And there's been a lot of complaints because they're the ones who chose the number of episodes they would do this in. Like, HBO did not say, nope, this is all you get and you have to finish it up. And Benioff and Weiss said, no, we're just doing 6 episodes and 6 episodes. And it is very rushed. And on the one hand, I'm like, you were always going to have people upset with you either way, so why not?
I was surprised by the way,
here's the highlights. Here's the highlights of where it was going to go in the books that will inevitably never be written at this point.
Yep.
And so I'm like,
pause. Has something happened just for us?
No.
Has something happened that he's said that he's not going to do it?
No, he's still planning on it. It's just that
he writes so slowly.
He writes
and
very
he's super
slowly.
Old and is not in like the best health.
He's not in the best health.
So,
he's not like he's a rather large man.
Yes.
Of ever advancing years, of course. Statistics are not on his side here.
Okay.
That's all.
I've run into that like 3 times this week, is that this last book is never going to happen, but okay.
I mean, it could in theory. It's just been, he's also not just been distracted with the show, but also with the spin-offs that they're doing. Because they've got like 3 spin-offs
it's
coming
like, look
off
at Robert Jordan. Robert Jordan didn't write the last 3 books of The Wheel of Time, and he was in better health with
putting
more
out books
time
more regularly
and writing more regularly than George R.R. Martin.
Right.
And he didn't finish his series.
His was just a freak. 9 in every million people get this. And of those, about half of them survive.
Yeah.
And
with this guy who is older, in worse shape, and writes more slowly, the odds are not in our favor.
Yeah. But then again, who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. Just because the odds shouldn't be in our favor doesn't mean that's
true. So I'm glad you brought this up, though, because I was going to bring up the latest fan reaction, because I've been thinking about it as well. And I've seen the odd comparison here and there of, oh no, what does this mean for Star Wars? Does that mean they're going to completely ruin, whatever? Like, one of the more clever ones was like, I hope this new trilogy isn't as rushed as this last season of, Game of Thrones or whatever. And I was thinking about why these people who have gotten nothing but lavish praise for all these years for Game of Thrones, now, the mobs turn on them like a mob in King's Landing. Look at me dropping references like I know what I'm talking about, people.
You do at this point. You probably know more than me.
And so I was sitting here thinking about it, and I'm going, well, to me, I think this is similar to Rian Johnson. I mean, the outrage certainly is similar. Yeah, I started thinking about why, And
the
here was
level
my
of
thinking.
competence is not similar, that's for sure. But the audience reaction, yes.
Yeah.
What the audience is getting.
And so I started thinking about why, we have very similar outcomes here, and why might that be? And so I was thinking that there actually are kind of similarities in the process as well. Both of them are taking something that's already been established and trying to say, okay, now let's go forward with this. And they get some things right according to fan expectations, but then other things they don't, and fans are angry in both cases, saying, well, it should have been X when you did Y, and now I'm angry.
I can also take it one further than that, too, that part of the problem is that, I mean, and this is their problem that they created for themselves as opposed to Rian Johnson picking it up from other people, but part of the problem is that the Game of Thrones books and movies... the TV show has gone out of its way to soften its more likable protagonists, like Daenerys and Jon and Tyrion. Yeah. None of them are as palatable in the books as they are in the show.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is they're trying to soften the protagonist to give people more of what they expect from a protagonist.
Yeah.
Whereas in the books, they are decidedly more gray. But that's coming back to bite them now, where it's like, okay, we have not only have audiences instinctively been softening protagonists in their mind, because that's something they do, is idealizing the characters that they like, but we have been actively encouraging that with the way we're writing these characters for the show. We have been making them softer than they were in the original story. And so once, especially in Daenerys' case here, where all of that grayness now all of a sudden comes to the forefront and becomes decidedly less than gray, it's less viable to a lot of people who have had this kind of neutered version of the character. Wonderful version. Like, they did a great job with her.
Yeah.
But at this point, and especially because these last 2 seasons are very rushed in comparison, it's really hard sell.
Yeah.
Like, if they'd been able to take the time to do it right, far fewer people would be upset. And even the ones that were upset because that's not what they wanted for the person that they named their child after, which that was you don't name someone after a Game of Thrones character until it's over.
And even then, just double think.
Yeah, even then, reconsider. But yeah, it would be a lot easier sell if they'd had taken the time to do it right and the confidence that they could do it right. Who knows?
Yeah, well, there's that, but I was thinking more along the lines of both with Game of Thrones and Star Wars, there was a certain amount of you're on the rails for a little while. Yeah. Like, there's a certain direction where it's like, well, no, this is where you're going to go. With Star Wars, it's because Lucas was in charge of 6 films.
Yeah.
So it's going to go a certain way. With Game of Thrones, you're not parroting. You're basing them off of books, which are already written. So you're going to hit this mark and then that mark, and you're going to go a certain direction. And it's when both of them finally say, okay, now we're done with the rails part.
Yes.
We're
not just doing fan pandering. Like, what do we do now?
Yeah, where do we go now? Okay, well, let's go right. And all the fans go, no, you should have gone left.
Because I've already got a story told in that direction that I want to hear.
This is why I don't think it's going to be a problem with their trilogy.
I agree, for the most part.
Because, well, I mean, there's always going to be some
I'm
problems.
no less confident in them than I am in J.J. Abrams. Let me put it that way.
Well, I was going to say, because with much like Rian Johnson's trilogy, there are no rails from the get-go.
Yeah.
So whatever our expectations are going to be, it's going to be from whatever it is that they're creating from the start. Yeah. So we won't have the ability to be like, well, you obviously should have done this with Luke instead of that, because there is going to be no Luke for us
also
to
depending
build
on where they set these things and how much the studio gets involved in their choices.
Yes, that's true. But from what we've heard, you know, it's going to be set early enough that it's not super connected to the original trilogy, so we can probably...
I look at this as, I know that these men are competent writers in many ways, and so I can give them all sorts of leeway. Like, I like the example of the chicken scene that you mentioned earlier, which is one of my favorites. So I came to Game of Thrones through YouTube clips. Like, I never had any interest. I picked up the books early, like decades ago. I started reading them. I lost interest after 60 pages. I just got bored. Not because the books aren't really well written, but because I have read so many books based off of, like, that have taken what George R.R. Martin introduced to the fantasy genre and run with it. It's the Seinfeld is unfunny effect, if you look that up on TV Tropes. That, by comparison, Game of Thrones seemed really bland to me. It was like, oh, I can see how majorly influential this has been. That doesn't do anything to engage me with it, though.
Yeah.
And so I never picked up the books after that initial 60-page run. I never picked up the show because I was like, I'm not interested in pornography. And, but then there was a YouTube clip of a speech Jon Snow gave at one point, and I was like, I could use an inspiring speech. Why not? I'll watch that. And I watched that, and I was like, that's some good writing. Wow, I'm impressed. And then there was another Jon Snow clip linked to that, and I was like, all right, I'll watch another one of these. Oh, that was good too. I like this Jon Snow guy. I've heard good things about him from people. Let's see, what else have we got here? And I think the next clip I clicked on was the hound, the chicken scene. and that is the scene that made me...
To go from Jon Snow to
I know, right? And that is the scene that made me go, yeah, looks like I'm going to have to be a fan of the show. Like, I
the
gotta pick this
writing
up.
is really incredible.
It is. Now, here's the thing. All three of those scenes, 2 of them are from the later seasons that we don't have from George R.R. Martin. So that was all Benioff and Weiss and whoever else they've got working with them in the writing room. And that hound scene, also not out of the books. Even though that is from a period covered by the books, they inserted that as extra stuff.
Wow.
That is not actually... I know because I
incredible.
grabbed the books and hunted through them trying to find that and discovered that, nope, there is no section there. That scene is entirely, again, Benioff and Weiss and the rest of this TV show.
That gives me a lot of confidence for their, their dialogue.
That's what I'm looking at, where I'm like, when they're not trying to finish someone else's magnum opus, when they're not rushing through all this, hopefully, like, again, with any creator, just because they've given you good stuff in the past is no guarantee that you'll get good stuff in the future.
James Cameron,
M. Night Shyamalan.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, they can go any direction. Yeah, even Joss Whedon, who I adore.
Yeah.
Has turned out some that are less impressive than others. So, all in all, I'm still hopeful for Benioff and Weiss. I also was tempted, well, I'm not tempted, I'm about to make the comment, so here we go. But I saw this initial fan reaction, I was like...
a Game of Thrones Star Wars episode. This is long.
Yeah, we might
I feel like
to.
we could do more with this, but...
So, I also had the initial reaction when I started hearing all the complaining where I was like, well, okay, so you're upset because they didn't give you... just a fan-pandery, predictable episode. It was rushed and the characters were underdone. Well, that's Rogue One right there. Why aren't Star Wars fans happy? Star Wars fans have nothing to worry about.
I saw that one coming.
Yeah.
I caught that.
Ross was, I could see it out of the corner of my eye. Ross was like, yeah, here we go.
It's coming. Yeah.
All right.
So now, in the other aspect of that, I know we've talked about this at length already, but it has actually been interesting and I think pertains because there are a lot of people that are afraid. And on that note, have you seen the petition that's gone around?
Oh, my word,
First,
yes.
there's 2 petitions, actually, that I think are, well, one's stupid, the other's hilarious. So the first one is...
They're both stupid, but one's stupid and hilarious.
So the first petition is that people want Benioff and Weiss to go back and redo episode or season 8 Game of Thrones. They also... I don't know if it was the official petition or if someone's trying to piggyback off that, and they want... Rian Johnson to also episode 8.
Oh wow!
Well, no, that wasn't the funny one.
Oh,
see,
really?
I know. And then the actual joke petition was the petition to stop viewers of media
from
making petitions. Yeah.
I'd sign that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I mean. On the one hand, part of me wants to go, that initial petition has over 1 million signings.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
For an HBO show.
The signatures there. And, you know, far be it for me to step on the toes of 1 million people who clearly want this. But at the same time, I mean, I write, like, I've been editing for a living for 10 years now. I have stories published. I want to be, my authorship is my goal, is to be an author of the likes of George R.R. Martin and Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. Media is my life, is what I'm saying. And I'm sitting here going, it's a TV show, people. Like, come on, move on. I get it. It's painful when you get something you don't like.
Yeah.
When a franchise disappoints. Even all the backlash on episode. Oh, man. See, and that's the one I always come back to. Like, I was talking about this with my sister, where I'm like, on the one hand, part of me is like, oh, shut your mouths and stop whining. And then part of me is like, but then there was How I Met Your Mother. I do remember what that's like.
My wife and I, over the summer, binged it, and we just decided to stop it before that final episode. We're like, oh, that's where the season ends. Right there. That was a good ending, guys.
my wife and I own seasons 1 through 8, and kind of regret it at this point. You know, that was so bad that it retroactively just made the rest of the show really unwatchable for us for quite a while.
Yep.
I've only recently reached the point where I could like find clips of that on YouTube and go, oh, that's right, I did really like this show at one point. And yeah, it is funny and there is some good stuff, but it was just so And I can go on at length about the writing of that, but it is
We'll
not
save
time.
it for
Yeah.
our How I Met Your Mother show.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's totally a thing. We'll save that for Patreon. If people really want to hear me rant about the last episode of How I Met Your Mother, we'll do a little Patreon bit of me delving into why that's such a crappy episode, but crappy series finale. But yeah,
I think we're talked out on the news. Is that are we done with the news?
I think
All
we've
right.
done far more of the news than anyone wanted to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think we
45
went about 10
minutes of the
longer
news.
than normal, but anyway. So, today's episode.
Right. Star Wars ring theory. Shall I go into Chiasmus real quick and then?
Real quick, I wanted to make one special shout out before we actually get to the end.
Whoa.
Do you guys remember Andrew Beach,
Yeah.
who we went to school with? So I ran
okay,
into him the other day, and he was talking about how he was listening to the podcast and asking us if we were going to do an episode on ring theory. I had never heard about it before. I had that conversation with him just a few weeks ago. So I wrote it down on the list, and then I didn't look at the rest of the list, and saw that, yes, we had already scheduled this episode today by that time. So thanks, Andrew, because it would have been...
There was somebody
We
else.
appreciate
and
the
if I were
suggestion,
more-
and it would have been you, but someone
There
beat
was
you.
someone else in the Facebook group who suggested it, or maybe it was on Twitter, and I was going to look it up, and then I forgot. Because I am always very prepared to do this
It
show.
was probably Stephen. Let's be honest. So,
No, it wasn't Stephen. It was somebody actually whose name I didn't recognize.
I apologize, not Stephen. But
Yeah. To all of our listeners who are not Stephen, we apologize.
so let me talk about chiasmus for a second. So chiasmus is a literary technique, or really a storytelling technique, because it can appear in things beyond literature, obviously, since we're going to be discussing it with the Star Wars movies. Basically, it is a method of formatting a story where you have ideas or themes or grammatical constructs, and it doesn't have to be a story. It can also be used just in as minuscule a thing as a line of dialogue, or where you're repeating grammatical constructions or just words, but you repeat them in reverse order. So you'd have a structure of like A, B, C, D, E, and that followed by E, D, C, B, A. So some famous examples of this on the small scale would be like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So we start with that country can do for you, and then you for your country is repeating the same thing but in reverse.
That's a great example.
It is a good one, right?
Did you get that off the Wikipedia?
I did get that off.
Okay, I was going to say, I read that this morning.
Yeah. It's a really solid example, and it's one that everybody knows. And so part of the reason it works really well is because you're basically setting up a dichotomy, often as in a false dichotomy, it might be, but you're setting up a dichotomy for your listeners, and then you are implicitly implying that one of them is better than the other, and giving the impression that you have gone over both sides of the argument because you're covering both. So in this case, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We've covered both sides. We've clearly implied one of these is better. And obviously that is a false dichotomy. Like, you can also not be concerned about asking anything about your country or yourself. You can ask what your country can do for you while asking what you can do for your country.
It doesn't matter, Chris. It's about the argument you're making.
Exactly. It can be an effective technique in many ways. On a larger scale, you can have entire stories or essays or writings of various sorts that are formatted in this way, where they'll give you a sequence of themes or ideas and such, and then repeat that sequence in reverse order, often kind of using that as a way to go back through the list and refute or re-examine or establish new things about each of those ideas. You see this a lot in scripture. Pick your religion. It was very common back in ancient times, so you can find this in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Talmud, in the Book of Mormon.
Since you went there, I was actually going to say, historically speaking, this idea of chiasmus does originate in the Middle East.
Yeah.
As a writing style, and then basically is self-contained in the Middle East, except for, oddly enough, in ancient America, where it springs up almost out of nowhere. And then basically in the Middle Ages, it gets sort of diffused throughout Europe and becomes a little bit more prominent in poetry and things like that. So.
Cool. But outside of scripture, poetry, like medieval stuff, some of my favorite more recent modern examples of chiasmus in storytelling, like thematic chiasmus over the arc of an entire story, would be something like Lev Tolstoy's The Forged Coupon, which I'm going to give you some spoilers, but this is several hundred years old at this point, so I don't think that's a problem. This is a...
Spoiler alert for the 1600s.
Yes, exactly. 1800s.
Okay. It's only 2 centuries.
Yeah. But yeah, still 2 centuries.
So
you've had plenty of time
guys.
to go through this. So this is basically a shorter story of his, especially when compared to something like War and Peace or Anna Karenina. And it's about a young man who forges a banknote. He gets a banknote for a certain amount. He forges a different amount on that, just because he wants more money. It's a dumb little thing that a kid does, basically. But then the first half of the story is just going through the consequences of that. Like, so he forges that, but then the woman whose money he's basically stolen from the bank, she gets in trouble with her husband because she's lost money. A guy at the bank gets accused of stealing it and gets fired. And then he resorts to horse thievery, and it just keeps having this ever escalating series of repercussions until you build up to the point where this man, in just horrible circumstances, who's been really burned by the world, is just going around breaking into people's houses, burglarizing the place, and callously murdering the occupants just because. And then he ends up breaking into the house of this woman who's basically a living saint. She's just a wonderful, amazing woman. He breaks in there and she doesn't even really react. She just kind of like, you do realize like what you're doing to yourself here. Like, this is horrible. You're destroying yourself, your immortal soul sort of thing. And he brutally murders her. But then it bothers him so much that he ends up going in, turning himself in as this serial murderer that's been going around. He gets locked up, finds God in jail, and ends up having a really positive effect on all the other prisoners, including some of the people we've seen before. And then the story, in reverse order of what we just saw, goes through all the people that
resolves it.
Yeah, each of the people that had their lives negatively and ever escalatingly affected by the initial forged coupon have their lives improved by this guy via what happened to him because of this woman, until it's gone all the way back down to that initial kid who is now an adult, and his relationship with his dad that caused his fighting with his dad, that was the reason he ended up stealing the money. And it's an amazing way. So, and it's using the chiasmus here, where it's basically repeating it in reverse order like that gives us this sense of progression. We can see that the same thing is happening here, that while yes, a very bad action can have ever echoing repercussions, so can a very good action, or even a mildly bad action or a mildly good action, can have these repercussive effects, and how the world works and how we influence one another. And it uses that chiasmus to a very powerful effect.
That actually sounds really interesting. I kind of want to read
it. It is
book.
a fantastic... I do recommend it. It is wonderful. One of my other favorite examples of this is Chapter 5 of the comic Watchmen by Alan Moore, which is titled Fearful Symmetry. And again, some spoilers here for Alan Moore's Watchmen, which if you haven't read and you have a tolerance for, a bit more of the grotesque, like this is edging into more of a Game of Thrones territory with its storytelling, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best comics ever written. And so Chapter 5 of this follows one of the characters, Rorschach, who has his mask. You've probably seen pictures of him even if you haven't read or watched any version of Watchmen. He has the mask that's shaped like a Rorschach image that's
test.
Rorschach test that's got the ink splotches they're constantly shifting on the face of his mask, but they're always
That's
mirrored.
actually kind of cool.
It is really cool. It looks very awesome. But it's also, what it's meant to imply about Rorschach is that he has this very black and white way of looking at the world. He's very much, there's a lot of mirroring going on with him. So this chapter, Fearful Symmetry, focuses on Rorschach. And so you've got that image of the Rorschach that is always mirrored like that, and the entire chapter is mirrored. So this is an entire 28 or 29 page chapter where you can almost go through panel by panel or sets of panels and compare them one-to-one. If you Google this, you can find a web page that just has a panel by panel comparison of this, just starting from the first panel and the last panel and comparing them. And it all builds up to the central spread of the 15th and 16th page, or 14th and 15th, where you have, throughout this chapter, Rorschach is trying to figure out who the bad guy is. Like, he's basically the only person that has noticed that somebody is going around killing off costumed superheroes. those who are still operating or those who have stopped operating because it's now illegal. And he's trying to find out who this is and work into it. And you don't actually find out until like 6 chapters later. But the central image of the center of this chapter is the villain of the piece, is the person who's behind everything at the center of it all, at the center of the chapter.
That's great.
And that the center image, you've got a center panel that's bridged across these 2 pages and framed by 3 panels on each side. And the movement of the characters in this panel creates a circle around him at the middle, which, if you turn it upside down, is actually that iconic smiley face, the smiley face of Watchmen with the blood on it. There's blood in the panel, part of it making a smile and part of it making the blood splatter across the top of the button near the eye. Like, it's a beautifully mirrored thing. So
that's incredible.
And so the thing I love about this, it mirrors Rorschach. It's, this chapter is all focused on Rorschach, so it's perfectly appropriate. He's trying to figure this out, and the framing of this chapter is telling you the answer, even though nobody picks up on that on the first read through. But it's amazing. It's beautiful.
Will now.
Yeah. It's definitely, even if you're not going to read the comic, it is worth looking at that chapter and that comparison. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that is Chiasmus in action. Like, it can do some really awesome things.
Yep.
And
just to make this more clear for our listeners, in case it wasn't already, right? Chiasmus is used to highlight the importance of something. Usually. That whatever is sort of at the height of that crescendo there, right in the middle, the very middle of the chiasmus, that is sort of what you are meant to most take away from the piece.
Yeah,
that's what's most important.
Frequently the case.
Usually that's the case.
And it's also used to reinforce. It's like we're taking things, we're repeating them, we're reanalyzing them, so it's meant to reinforce, reflect, provide new ideas about what we've already seen. Like, it can be used a lot of ways very effectively. And sometimes it's just done because it's pretty. Like, human beings, we love symmetry. We really like to see it all over, everywhere. And so chiasmus is often worthwhile just as, hey, look, I created a chiasmus with my writing. That's pretty, isn't it? So Star Wars ring theory.
I've included chiasmus in some of my historical writing.
I have included chiasmus in some of my writing. It's fun.
It's been fun. So, Star Wars ring theory is on October 31st, 2014. A guy named Mike Climo, or Climo, maybe? I don't know how I'm...
Sure.
Climo is how I'm going to say it. Which, oddly enough, sounds kind of like a Star Wars name.
It does.
He posted this, Ring Theory, the Hidden Artistry of the Star Wars Prequels. And then the subtitle was How George Lucas Used an Ancient Technique Called Ring Composition, which we've here called chiasmus, to reach a level of storytelling sophistication in his 6-part saga that is unprecedented in cinema history. So, bit wordy, as all academic things should be.
So, give them the website. Do you have the website?
It's StarWarsRingTheory.com.
I'll link to it.
And then we'll also have a link for that as well.
And when we're talking lengthy, it's 9 pages.
It's 9
web
pages.
But each page is
kind of a thesis in its own.
Yeah. You know how when you're looking at the scroll bar on the side of your window, you like to see it when there's a little bit of thickness there? Most of the time, it's a little square.
It's a little one. Yep.
Yeah. So. Kyler linked to this in our notes, and I opened it up, read the first page, saw that it was 9 pages, and went, that's nice. I'll let him explain it to me.
So
I know what chiasmus is. I'm good.
I opened it, read the first page, and I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like there's a lot to go on here. And then I noticed it was 9 pages. Then I was like, So I went through like 3 pages, and then I was like, well, I'm sure these other guys have looked at it, so... But no, I mean, we're going to get through it.
See, and this was one of those where I was like, okay, we'll see about this, because I've seen
it's actually pretty good.
Other dissections of various movies and people trying to label things as chiasmus. Like I did read one for The Empire Strikes Back that was setting this up as, look how The Empire Strikes Back is a perfect chiasmus, and a lot of it I was just like, that is a big stretch. Linking those two together.
I'm just kind of running through the movie in my head, going, a couple of things, sure, maybe, but overall, mostly no.
Yeah.
Someone tried to say the single movie itself.
Yes, the movie itself was a chiasmus. Okay. And there was some stuff there that I was like, okay, it's. I could see arguing that it's not a perfect chiasmus, but they were explicitly stating that it is a perfect chiasmus, and I was like, you're stretching a lot of these comparisons.
So, this basically, is what we've been saying, right? This guy says that movies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 form a chiasmus. That episode 1 is a mirror of episode 6. Mm-hmm. Episode 2 is a mirror of episode 5. Episode 3 mirrors 4. So that you have, starting with numerical order, not release order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you have C, B, A, B, C. Which,
technically, if you put it in release order, it would also be a chiasmus. So
that is... No.
CB... You have ABC, CBA. If you switch that around, you get CBA, ABC.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so, that's true. But for the purposes of this, they're doing first...
Yes.
Chronologically within the universe to last within the chronology. Anyway.
By episode order.
Yeah, by episode order. And at first I was like, okay, there are some things that I can see right off the bat without having to read this where, okay. But then as I read it, I was like, wow, they actually put some thought into this, and it holds up actually pretty well. Both from a narrative storytelling point of view, but also visually, it holds up quite well. So, one thing that I wanted to compare visually first, and you'll be able to see this if you go there. Again, StarWarsRingTheory.com.
And really, you should go take a look at it.
It's really quite impressive because... Yeah, it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing when you have the visuals right there. Yeah. It's very impressive. So basically, side-by-side comparison of the two openings. Both Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace show literally a diplomatic shuttle going from A to B.
Space station, yeah.
Then it cuts to interiors of the ships, from the cockpit view. Then you have... it cuts to messages. So you have like Newt Gunray and then you have the Death Star operators, right? Both communicating with the incoming shuttle. Then you have a rear shot of the transport vessel going into its destination, right? Into its landing bay. Then you have an interior of the landing bay as it's receiving the shuttle, whether it's the Consular class or the Lambda class. Mm-hmm. And it is really visually stunning. Like, I had a much deeper... So, as we all know, right, Return of the Jedi is my favorite of all the movies. But it made me have a much greater appreciation for what was going on in Episode 1 just from this.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this years ago, actually, before it was ever listed here on StarWarsRingTheory.com. Before this was ever a thing, I remember this idea floating around the internet. I'm like, oh, that actually does kind of work. And so for a long time, my thoughts on Episode 1 have been lifted by this. This guy, this Mike guy, quotes Anne Lancashire, professor of cinema studies and drama at the University of Toronto. In her 2000 essay, The Phantom Menace, Repetition, Variation, Integration, which, boy, I want to go find this now and read it. She argues that with the prequels, George Lucas was creating something unique in popular film. Not a series of narratively independent sequels and prequels, the normal mode in movie sequelization focused on film genre conventions and or on specific actors/roles, nor an old-fashioned serial with merely narratively interlocking episodes, but an epic mythological saga full of exotic locales and monsters like the sagas of old, consisting of at least 6 mutually dependent parts interrelated in an intricately designed narrative, mythological, and metaphoric whole. This means that Lucas was expanding the original trilogy into an epic sextet with patterns of plot and structure, cinematic illusions, and visual imagery acquiring meaning above all from their interrelationships. So according to Lancashire, each film should be read in terms of its part in the larger unified whole. And then Lucas himself alluded to this in an interview following the release of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Each episode has to stand on its own and have meaning on its own, except that it's only one chapter in the book. It's not the book. I can't sacrifice one for the other, so I'm constantly balancing between the now and larger picture. The now has to be engaging with the larger picture is what's really important. So right off the bat, I think that's really cool that Lucas had this idea in mind intentionally when creating the prequel trilogy to make it, at least it seems anyway, into some sort of chiasmus, which is pretty cool. And so you look at, again, trying to summarize 9 pages worth of pretty in-depth, meaty
that quote,
internet stuff.
That quote does bring up one question for me, though. The comments that Lucas made about actually planning this out as a 9-part story.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's just it. It's
but...
just that, I mean, Lucas has said at times that he was creating a 9-part story. We know that eventually became the case. Right?
Well, but he's also said before that he was planning a 12-part story. He was planning a...
the number changes now. I think when he actually said, I'm going to put down a wad of cash and we're going to make 3 more movies. We're going to do a prequel, that he was like, hey, how do we do a prequel? I know. We're going to set out and we're going to do this.
Now, to be fair,
style.
One of his earliest plans for the original trilogy was that it was going to be a pair of mirrored trilogies.
Yes.
Where the first trilogy followed Luke Skywalker and the second followed his sister, who was not Leia.
Right.
And when that plans for that trilogy got scrapped, they went, oh, well, we've already referenced there being another Skywalker. He only knows one other woman, so... Originally, there were plans to do a trilogy that mirrored, so that I could definitely see George picking up with a prequel trilogy and going, I could still mirror here. I could still do a Chiasmus here. Especially given his fondness for pulling out with the hero of 1,000 faces and everything.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
For trying to draw on epic structures and of the past.
Yeah.
I could totally buy that he did this intentionally.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So, I was going to go into the sequels already. But it is interesting, though, because then that means, well, what is the center of the Chiasmus here? Episodes 3 and 4, which are interesting to think about as pairs and what the mirror might be.
Well, he goes through on one of those pages and dissects those. Is that where you're going next?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, if you want to.
Well, with the actual comparisons, so the writer of the article goes through and actually does take, an episode.
Hold on. Before we go in there, let's. He's got the rules of ring composition here, which Chris already went over a little bit, but it might be good to just do it one more time in a different way. So the first rule is exposition or prologue. There's generally an introductory section that states the theme and introduces the main characters. Mm-hmm. That's, your first scene in any Star Wars movie, right? Plus the opening crawl. Yeah. Those two things together do it. Split into 2 halves, the ring composition must split into 2 halves at the midpoint. That's kind of the nature of Chiasmus. Parallel sections, the 2 halves of the ring must be arranged in parallel. We kind of went over that. Indicators to mark individual sections. The individual sections of the ring composition must be clearly marked so the reader knows where each section starts and stops, which is where a lot of people that say, oh, this is Chiasmus, this is kind of where it falls apart, is it's not clearly defined. You might have like A, B, C, D, B, A. And it's like, okay, well, then not really. It's not really Chiasmus at that point, right? And the fact that these are broken into episodically titled movies is very helpful when creating this Chiasmus. Central loading, of course, that's what I talked about earlier, where the centerpiece of the Chiasmus, that A, B, C, C, B, A, those 2 C's are going to be the focal point, right? The most important things. And then rings within rings, you can keep going. Your Chiasmus can be, in theory, infinitely deep if you wish. Mm-hmm. And then closure of the 2 levels. You want, by the time you're done, you want that perfect mirroring, like Chris's example of John F. Kennedy's quote, where it is a pretty perfect mirror that by the time you're done, it's all wrapped up nicely, like every part has been addressed with its
own course.
Yeah, with its own.
It's nesting brackets encoding. It's like you have to close them in reverse order that you created them. Yeah.
So okay, so go ahead, Ross. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to actually go through the plot points.
Sure.
For the one that I look at in particular is A New Hope and Revenge of the Sith, because they are that center piece. But he's got them for all 3 pairs, for Attack of the Clones and Empire, and for Phantom Menace and Return of the Jedi. Now, we also have to read them from center out. So he's got this chart where he takes Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and breaks them apart by acts, and gives you just the major plot points in each of those acts, right? So Act 1 for A New Hope. A fateful encounter takes place between Obi-Wan and the Skywalker.
Yep.
Obi-Wan and Luke come across slaughtered Jawas, which lead to a terrible discovery. And Obi-Wan and Luke leave Tatooine. That's Act 1 of A New Hope, right?
Reminds me of another
that
joke.
Is a loose way of describing Act 1 of A New Hope.
Those are the points in Act 1 of A New Hope that reflect points in Act 2 and 3 of Revenge of the Sith. So, Act 3 of Revenge of the Sith.
How much did Vader's suit cost? An arm and a leg.
2 arms and 2 legs. Yeah.
No.
Well, an arm and
legs.
2 legs. Yeah, sorry. My bad.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
He just paid the first arm away earlier, but
Yeah.
so Act 3
It's a
of Revenge of the
down
Sith. A fateful encounter takes place between Obi-Wan and a Skywalker.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Luke travel to Tatooine.
Yep.
Right? And then in New Hope they leave. And then the last point that he has listed for Act 2 of Revenge of the Sith is Obi-Wan and Yoda come across slaughtered younglings, which lead to terrible discovery. Okay? So you have mirroring across those 2 movies in those acts.
in reverse. Yeah.
In reverse. Act 2 of A New Hope, there's a great disturbance in the Force when the Death Star destroys Alderaan. Luke, Han, and Obi-Wan enter the Death Star and rescue the captive Princess Leia. They escape to a hidden rebel base. So Act 2 of Revenge of the Sith, there is a great disturbance in the Force when Anakin turns to the dark side and Palpatine executes Order 66, which isn't given to us quite the same as it is in A New Hope, but Yoda is obviously feeling a disturbance in the Force.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And we have a mass genocide taking place.
Correct.
You know, so that works.
And then let's see, because we are...
Chris is shaking his head.
I'm doing that head wobble where you're like, I'm not nodding, but I'm not quite shaking my head either. Like,
Yeah. So then it then moves to Act 1 of Revenge of the Sith, where the mirroring takes place. You have Anakin and Obi-Wan enter General Grievous' ship and rescue the captive Chancellor Palpatine, which mirrors Han and Luke rescuing Leia on the Death Star. And then you also have, they escape. So in A New Hope, they escape to a hidden rebel
was a
base.
little weaker myself.
And then Revenge of the Sith is Grievous escapes to his hidden Separatist base.
Yeah, that one is a little stronger.
And then Act 3 of A New Hope is a space battle between Imperial and Rebel forces rages over the Death Star. Act 1 of Revenge of the Sith is a space battle between Republic and Separatist forces rages over Coruscant. So, while they're not exact mirrorings of each other, they are similar.
Well, but that's part of the thing for me is they're only mirroring one another if you take events out of order. Like the list of events that he gave us there, and I was just looking through the ones for the episode 1 and 6 comparison and the episode 2 and 5. They're all over the place. Like he's got Anakin inserting the eye into 3PO's socket in Phantom Menace, compared to Salacious Crumb eating the eye out of C-3PO's eye socket in Return of the Jedi. And I'm like, sure, those are both similar. They are in the movies that you've compared them to. One takes place in the introductory adventure moment, and one takes place halfway through the movie. Like, that's poorer mirroring if they are intended to mirror one another, if we're looking at this as a proper chiasmus. You also get and so I'm like, there are a lot of similarities, and I could still buy that this was George trying to deliberately do a chiasmus, but a lot of the comparisons he's doing, I'm like, these feel like a stretch to me. Mm-hmm. Like these don't even up appropriately. Now, if we're looking at episode 3 and episode 6, I actually feel like I could almost make a stronger argument, and this will get into what we're going to talk about later, that this is actually a trilogy mirroring a trilogy, not mirroring, but repeating 3 times actually, with this, and then the prequels, the originals, and then the sequels, all repeating, but not necessarily chiasmus style mirroring. Because when you've got like, well, no, even then that's still weak. Never mind, I take that back. But
now,
yeah,
and part of this might be because you do have to consider other things in movie making. You wouldn't have to.
Sure. But part of the reasoning that he's giving for the proof that this is the case he's discussing episode 1 in here, and he's saying, oh, people complain about the story structure of episode 1 and how episode 1 makes no sense, and it's because he wasn't trying to make sense. He was basing it off of the story structure of episode 6 and kind of forced it to make it fit. And it's like, yeah, but that's the thing. It doesn't quite fit anyway. So the argument that he's making concessions for storytelling's sake when one of this guy's arguments is he was ruining the storytelling for chiasmus' sake.
But storytelling isn't really even the consideration I was thinking of. You have pacing, you have...
But again, I would say the pacing is not really exactly solid in any of the prequel movies.
Sure.
Episode 3 doesn't, not too bad, but...
Yeah. But, I mean, it's just that it might also be with other people not being on the same page with George, having to kind of muck around and mess with things and shuffle
maybe.
around.
I mean, I will say, as I'm looking through these, and particularly combining the plot points he's going with some of the visual comparisons he's got, I feel like he's got a bit stronger argument than, like, I'll be reading through this and going, oh, that doesn't work there. That's not a great comparison. But then I'll hit some of his visual comparisons and go, okay, but I can see that. That is pretty solid.
And now, in order for this to work, do we have to actually get down into that deeper level? Because I'm thinking.
I'm saying if we don't, it's a rather messy chiasmus, is what I'm saying.
For me, it feels more like just the fact that those plot points are in that particular chapter of the saga.
Sure, but at the same time, it reminds me of when we talked about the comparisons between Harry Potter characters and Star Wars characters, and I'm like, well, sure. If you isolate out this one aspect of that character to compare against this one aspect of that character, like it's like, oh, this character, if we're going to say that they're made up of 100 aspects maybe, and so is this character, and I'm going to pick out 3 for this character and 3 for this character, and look how much they match. Hagrid is the tall, hairy friend. Chewbacca is the tall, hairy friend, basically the exact same thing.
That's racist.
Which is, well, and it's stupid. They're not even close. Like, it's an extremely forced comparison. And a lot of these, I feel like, are a similar thing where it's like, well, look, this is basically the important plot points of this act of this movie. And I'm like, that is a way of describing the important plot points of this movie, but it's kind of weak. So there's some solid stuff here. I'm not saying he's completely off base, and I could totally buy that George was trying to do this and was just kind of doing either just a lackadaisical kind of like John Williams, where he's like, he is the king of introducing leitmotif back into the movie, into movie scoring and everything, but he's also like the most lackadaisical, does whatever he wants with leitmotif. He doesn't go by the strict rules of it like Howard Shore did with Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And so I could see that it being that sort of thing where George is going like, I'm going to do chiasmus, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over making sure it fits well. Or in a less, polite way of putting it, maybe I'm going to do a chiasmus and it turns out I'm really bad at doing a chiasmus. Yeah. I could see that. But I also don't, I'm like, it's weak enough that I could doubt whether or not it was deliberate too. Like I could see it going either way. There's not enough for me to go, oh yeah, that is clearly a chiasmus right there. But there's also not enough for me to, there is enough for me to go, well, maybe. Well, there's some potential here. But it does feel like he's forcing a lot of these comparisons for me is the main thing. It's like he's picking out little things like, let's see. But but then there are some really strong ones, like he's got this shot from episode 3 and episode 4 of C-3PO walking down a hallway on the Tantive 4, where it's like, okay, yeah, those are deliberately mirrored. We all recognize that. But so it's like, there's enough of those that it's like, okay, was this just George doing a callback? Was he just making a visual reference to something he'd done before, and now we're trying to construct a chiasmus out of it? And
But at least with the pictures that he has throughout the article, there are so many of them, though, that do reflect each other, whether or not they take place at the same or at the appropriate time codes.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is if the timing of it is very important to it being a chiasmus.
Yes. So you can intentionally mirror your own work for thematic elements, but for it to be chiasmus proper, Chris is right there. The order that they are mirrored in is important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the things comparisons he's got here is Vader being raised on the medical table or whatever, where he stands and reflecting that to Vader stepping into the hallway the very first time we ever saw Vader, unless you're Kyler and watched episode 2 first, or you're me and you didn't have the first portion of this. Yeah, there's some engaging stuff. The pose is similar. You got a black background versus a white background, making an interesting opposing mirror. But at the same time, you're mirroring something from the end of episode 3 to something at the beginning of episode 4, where later you're comparing things from the beginning of episode 4 to the beginning of episode 3.
See, and this makes me wonder if maybe this is how we get from A to B. Lucas is a filmmaker, which means, I don't want to say primarily, but a major portion of his goals are going to be visual. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you want a good story and everything, but if story is all you care about, go write a book, right? You're getting into film because you want to show something. You want visuals, right? So I can see Lucas intentionally thinking to himself like, oh, I've done this scene before. This would be a really cool way to mirror that. Cool. And since he is known to take really classic elements of storytelling, which do sort of naturally include elements of chiasmus, that as he's writing his story, the chiasmus sort of slips in somewhat naturally just from his own regular storytelling, but the visuals are intentional, which is why maybe the chiasmus isn't quite perfect, because he's not focused on the timing, the narrative aspect of chiasmus, but he is focused on the visuals, which is why we can find so many, because you're right, the visuals, and especially where you can see them side by side here on the website, I mean, it's clear that Lucas is going, yep, we're going to take this and we're going to make it this now, and they're going to mirror each other. But the timing element, maybe that's just, it's naturally off because Lucas, while still employing it, wasn't necessarily as focused on that, if that makes sense.
I lean more towards Lucas really liked visual callbacks to things he's done before, often with valid thematic intention.
Absolutely.
But not necessarily, I argue that he probably wasn't doing a chiasmus, because you have some shots that are very visually similar and can be mirrored, like those two shots of Vader, or the shots of 3PO walking down what's basically, if not literally, the exact same hallway. Yeah. But at the same time, so we've got, how many examples can we pick out that are obviously not in a chiasmus? Like, say, we've got Palpatine sitting in his throne room in his chair and turning around to face an approaching Anakin and Obi-Wan. You've got that at the end or mid-end, like end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3 of Return of the Jedi, mirrored against the beginning end of the opening sequence, not even near the end of Act 1 of Revenge of the Sith. Like that's a very, very heavy, obvious visual callback.
Right.
When, setting up Palpatine and Emperor Palpatine later.
So for our lettering in chiasmus, that would be a C pairing up with an A, which doesn't match for chiasmus.
Exactly. And so I would suggest, while there are enough of these callbacks of his that you can pick a bunch of them out and construct what looks like a chiasmus. I would say that that's what's happening, is a fan constructing a chiasmus.
I also agree. I think that's what's happened, is a chiasmus has been retroactively inserted in this theory. But what you were saying is basically what I was saying with Lucas, where there are natural elements in good storytelling that do reflect a chiasmus-like.
Yes, absolutely.
Like rises and falls, that's natural storytelling, and so that there's going to be some natural resemblance to a chiasmus even without it being so. And then, like you said, Lucas really does like to visually call back to his own stuff, and he does so really quite well. But the fact that it looks like chiasmus is, I think, in a lot of ways coincidental.
Yeah. Now, there are some areas too where I could look and go, but here is some, like, I'd look at the titles of each of them where it's like, okay, we've got Phantom Menace and the Return of the Jedi, which is kind of the appearance of, in the one case, the appearance of something bad, the appearance of something good. We've got Attack of the Clones versus Empire Strikes Back, which both involves attacking forces. And in one case, the goodish guys, and with the other, the bad guys. Yeah. And then we have Revenge of the Sith. We have this dark contrasted with A New Hope, where it's like the death of Hope and then the appearance of Hope. There's some argument to be made there for a chiasmus setup. But again...
See, but then I would say,
enough.
But isn't that just normal, natural storytelling, that there's sort of a crescendo growing up to the bad guys, and then the bad guys start to fall off,
Potentially, except that with titles, like titles don't usually do a heavy amount of storytelling.
Of all the potential titles you could have made off of all those episodes.
Especially given how much flack people have given to The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones as titles. Like, Phantom Menace never really bothered me. A lot of people, when that came out, were like, well, that's a weird, like, what kind of name is that? And I'm just like, that's dumb. Like, what's it? It's a Phantom Menace. Like, okay, these are schlock. Like, these are, these were always intended to be a Buck Rogers style thing.
I was just like,
now,
okay,
Attack of the Clones, however, when that one hit, I remember hearing that and going, Attack of the Clones? Like, I mean, I guess it's still pretty schlocky and kind of that feel of Buck Rogers sort of thing, but just when paired with the other titles, it seemed odd to me.
Yeah.
But, so if it's like, if we're deliberately trying to name it in a way that will evoke The Empire Strikes Back, well, maybe.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, too, because thinking about the titles, right? Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, Return of the Jedi seem a little bit more ambiguous to me in what they could mean. That seems like there's a little more mystery, a little more maybe spirituality going on, something like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas The Empire Strikes Back, Attack of the Clones. Those two seem pretty straightforward and honestly a little bit boring in comparison to the other titles, where it is sort of that less mystical, spiritual, unknown, whatever, and more of just a, hey, here's what's going to happen in this movie. The Empire's going to strike back. Hey, there's going to be clones, and they're attacking in this movie. So in a way, there is a mirror.
Well, which arguably, I mean, that's not really what that episode was about. It was all...
No, but neither was it for The Empire Striking Back. The Empire Striking Back literally is the first act of the movie.
But it's also... The Empire's got the rebels over a barrel through every act of that episode. Like also freezing Han and Carbonite.
But I would say as well
Whereas with Attack of the Clones, it all just kind of happens at the end. They're discovered there are clones.
Yes, and it happens at the end, but it leaves you going, well, the galaxy itself is kind of over a barrel. We are in open war now.
But as far as the way the story relates to the title, Empire Strikes Back, you could.
It is better.
Yeah.
It is a stronger correlation.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate for the thing here, but you're right. Empire Strikes Back is a stronger, more related to its material, yes, than Attack of the Clones. Because you're right, it is only that last 20 minutes or whatever.
Go ahead and toss Attack of the Clones weak title as yet another reason why it's worse than Phantom Menace. But
shoot! I'm cutting my own legs off.
Hey, one more arm and you can get a cool robot suit.
I know, right? Oh, shoot.
No, I mean, yeah, there's some cool stuff, but I would say it's more of George's general tendency towards callback and self-reference and visual continuity, because I don't want to make this sound like a bad thing that George does or did, but at the same time, I would say it's...
should be clear with that.
It's less structured than
making
a Chiasmus.
Callbacks to previous things. That's not a bad thing. Yeah. And I think
especially
Lucas does
when it's just a subtle visual thing. Yeah. Lucas, well, I mean, I'd say everybody's done it well. Like, JJ did it well.
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson did it left and right.
No, I was just saying, but within the six movies
Lucas
we're talking about, Lucas has done it really well where he calls back his own stuff.
I mean, that's one of the stronger things in Rogue One, too, that they do a really good job of visual callbacks and everything. Even Solo did really well at this, so...
Yeah.
All in all.
But the thing is I feel... I am torn. So when we went into this episode, I'm thinking, of course, they are chiasmuses.
Chiasmes? I don't know.
Sure. Chiasms. Go with that.
Chiasmus
can be either chiasmus or chiasm. And so, chiasms.
And so, but yes, after our discussion, it is more like, I guess there are things that don't fit. It is definitely not a rock solid chiasmus.
Yes.
Not as rock solid as he makes it out to be in...
Yeah. Right. Not as rock solid as, like, Fearful Symmetry Chapter 5 of Watchmen.
And I think that goes back into the idea of, I don't think Lucas intended this to be chiasmus. It just sort of happened that it has a lot of coincidences. Whereas with that Chapter 5 of that show, the artist and the storytellers clearly go into it going, okay, this is going to be chiasmus. Well, and here's the middle of
it.
The
title of the issue was literally Fearful Symmetry. Like it had the poem and everything.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is I feel like there's still just too much for it to be completely accidental.
I don't know.
I don't think he was concerned with 100% chiasmus. I think I'm in the camp of, he wanted to kind of mirror himself, but it wasn't so much a...
Well, here's some examples of how I see it happening. So, like, the very first example that this guy gives us in his breakdown is the ship flying into the hangar. So we've got at beginning of Phantom Menace, you've got the consular shuttle approaching the donut droid control ship, and flying into the hangar and landing.
Luker Hulk class battleship.
And comparing that to the Lambda shuttle flying towards the Death Star, landing in the hangar and everything.
Can we talk about how on the nose George is with the naming of his things? The Trade Federation has Luker Hulk battleships. Yes. Oh boy. George, come on. Okay.
But yeah, so like there are some strong visual comparisons to be made there. But I would argue that's less a case of him deliberately trying to mirror the first moment of Episode 1 with the first moment of Episode 6, and more just him trying to mirror his general style in the original trilogy with what he's always done for ship landings and hangar entrances and such.
And honestly, like, they looked really good in the original trilogy, so why not copy it and make it look good for your new trilogy.
Well, and make it visually consistent.
Yeah.
Like, this is what a ship landing in a hangar has always looked like, so it should look like that here.
And that's...
Because I would argue you could...
That's kind of where I'm falling with
I would
this.
argue that you could also make a similar comparison, not perfect one-to-one, but again, he's not doing a perfect one-to-one comparison here, with the Millennium Falcon being drawn into the Death Star in Episode 4, with the beginning of Episode... Like, it's not identical, no. There's not the, like, oh, we've got 2 Jedi coming here, well, we've got to... But again, he's picking out isolated things to be like, see, there's a 2 here and there's a 2 there. And it's like, okay, but you're ignoring the 5, 6, 9, 2, and the other 2 and the 4 that are all there, whereas over here we've got a 7, 7, 6, 9, 2. Like, that's not...
Yeah. And that's why
and over here we've got a 2, 4, 6, 0, 1. And...
Gotta be careful of those 2319s.
Oh, 2319!
And an 877-5309.
867.
867, son of a whore! I thought I had that right! Ah,
it was really close. Good job.
Good one, Ross. Yeah. Dang it. Try to be clever. Ross shuts me down.
Just want to make sure you're doing it right, man.
But yeah, the more we talk about this, the more I think it really... Any elements of chiasmus that are present, I think probably just showed up from George's natural reliance on traditional storytelling methods that are themselves going to have elements of chiasmus in there.
Yeah.
And so that's why it is possible to say, well, here's this and this and this that match up with this and this and this, but it also explains why there's...
I would argue it was not the authorial intent to create chiasmus here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So then the second part that we were talking about discussing for this episode.
Yeah.
Which I think the first part of our discussion here today has kind of ruined the thought.
Well, yes.
But it's still valid to talk about mirroring and callbacks.
So
and such,
how does the sequel trilogy fit in with the greater chiasmus picture?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is there a mirror?
So...
Which, interestingly, would make Empire Strikes Back the absolute focal point of these 9 movies.
Yeah.
Huh. That would, yes.
And it's the best one.
What? Kyler?
Oh, no. It's the best. It's just not my favorite.
It was my favorite until Last Jedi came along, but I could argue that Episode 4 is the best written. But...
Well, as far as like a self-contained story, because it was...
Well, not just self-contained, just as far as just sheer, like, cleanliness and, and neatness of the story, just how well constructed it is. But that's not this episode.
Yeah. So in my...
Did you hear that, audience? We didn't tangent.
Too far.
Very far, yeah. No. We started one, but we stopped.
So in my 5 minutes of thinking about the plot points of what we have so far of the sequels and reading what he had here as far as plot points go, it doesn't mirror in the ABC, CBA sort of mirroring, but it is... So New Hope is C, Empire Strikes Back is B, and Jedi is A, according to him. The sequel trilogy, so far, to my, again, 5 minutes of thinking about it, would also be C and B. Because...
yes, Episode 4 and Episode 7 are heavily
So what we have
repetitive.
just for visuals, and this was how my brain sort of interpreted fitting the sequel trilogy in, if they're going to fit in, is that you have like a Venn diagram, and in the middle of the Venn diagram where they overlap, that's the original trilogy. And then you have a chiasmus coming in from the one side with the prequels, and a chiasmus coming in from the other side with the the sequels, because it's not. I mean, Episode 9 hasn't come out yet, but is it going to mirror Phantom Menace? Does Last Jedi mirror Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones?
Yeah, well, see, and that's the thing right now.
So they have to both mirror the prequel trilogy or the original trilogy, but from sort of opposite sides.
Let's consider A New Hope and Force Awakens.
I was going to say, because the most heavily similar movies in the Star Wars universe are Episode 4 and Phantom Menace.
So first on his list is Act 1, a fateful encounter takes place between Obi-Wan and the Skywalker. In the case of the sequels, it would be between the Jedi and the... Well, actually, I guess, because they're both Jedi in that case in New Hope, but you'd have Rey and Finn meeting. That's the fateful call to action, which is the same in both. Obi-Wan and Luke come across...
But already that's a lot weaker than Phantom Menace.
Sure. Well, it would be Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm losing. Yeah, okay.
The next one is Obi-Wan and Luke come across slaughtered Jawas, which leads to a terrible discovery.
I also got to remember that, like I said, these plot points that he's listing here are specifically chosen out as, oh, look, these aren't necessarily the storytelling beats that, like, finding slaughtered Jawas that's actually a pretty incidental moment. You
heard it here. Chris doesn't care about Jawa lives.
No, I don't.
Hashtag Jawa lives matter.
No, it's the finding of the Jawas there leads to Luke hurrying home, which leads to his actual pivotal moment of coming back to Luke, coming back and saying, "I want to come with you and learn the ways of my Force and become a Jedi like my father." That's the actual pivotal storytelling moment. Finding the Jawas is only being picked out here so that we can compare it to finding out about the slaughtered younglings.
Right.
That's the only reason he picked out that moment, because he's forcing that.
Yeah, where the slaughtered younglings itself is the pivotal moment.
Yes, very much.
Well, but that also causes Obi-Wan to go and actually look at the tapes and find out who did it, which was the terrible discovery.
No, but who's the story about? It's about Anakin.
And
Anakin's final turning point where it's like, okay, there's no coming back from this anymore. You killed untold numbers of children.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
You know, that's
looking at it from that point. Like for Obi-Wan, there's some similarities there where it's Obi-Wan finding, but again, the Jawas is not a pivotal, like, dark moment. It's
frankly, not even in the movies do anybody care.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, Jawas. Oh shoot, my family's in danger. Bye.
Next on his list is Obi-Wan and Luke leave Tatooine, but again, that is just
that's the beginning of Act 2. It's less of, but it is
it's a very standard
it is an important moment.
And that one, I think, is, okay, sure.
We've accepted the call to adventure, so let's go adventure. That's,
So next on his list is there's a great disturbance in the Force when the Death Star destroys Alderaan. Now, we do have Starkiller Base destroying...
But that's in the end of the third act. Or in the middle of the third act.
In the second act. In A New Hope... The destruction of Alderaan is mid-second act.
It's been a while since I've seen episode 7.
Yeah. So second act basically begins when Luke says, "I want to become a Jedi." That's the end of the first act, and everything after that is second act until we get to Yavin 4, basically. Until we get to the Rebel base, and now we're officially well into third act. In mirroring that with episode 7, I've never actually sat down to take this apart with episode 7, but episode 7 is Rey accepting I'm going to leave with Finn. I would say that's the point of
that's her leaving Tatooine.
It's when the two of them start running, which is less of a heroic choice moment, so that's kind of
the hero can choose, or the hero can be sort of shoved out the door into adventure.
That can happen.
Which is definitely what they're doing is, you're not going to leave? Well, here, adventure is going to come kick you out the door.
Yeah. And then Act 3 would begin, arguably, when they go to Starkiller Base and they lightspeed through the shields ludicrously. But I could even make an argument for it being later. I could make an argument for it being, for the third act proper, actually beginning once they reunite with Rey, and from there on would be the third act.
Well, I feel like Finn making the decision to go rescue Rey and then making the decision.
And that's the thing, is I'm approaching this as Rey is the main character. Because Rey and Kylo are the main characters of this.
They are the Luke and the Vader here.
Yeah, that's
from the original trilogy where we're
if we're comparing to the original trilogy, but just as far as but Finn is very much one of the protagonists, is a major character. And there's definitely an argument to be made that although Rey is the main character of the whole series, Finn is the main character of Force Awakens.
Of course, wouldn't their discussion about attacking Starkiller Base coincide with Rey beginning her escape from Starkiller Base?
Yeah, but I would argue that the third act proper begins once we reunite with Rey, and now we're on a heading for Han to go get himself killed, and them to get all angry, and all this stuff to start happening. And then that's not solid. I haven't watched Force Awakens in quite a while. I'd have to sit down, and you'd probably be better off going and finding someone who's actually done a more thorough analysis than I'm doing here, but this is just off the top of my head. But I can do episode 4 in my sleep. But episode 7 I'm less well-versed on.
Now I forget where I am on my list. We just did, the disturbance in the Force, right? And the destruction of...
Alderaan
/ Hosnian Prime.
The Hosnian Prime system, yeah. So,
Kaz's parents.
Okay, those are both there, but what else are you going to do if you have a giant space station? Killer Death Ray space station?
Yeah.
Well, but with episode 4, like episode 7 is heavily mirroring episode 4, but comparing it to episode 3, less so.
Right. And that's why I'm thinking it is more of just it's not a mirror. The sequels aren't necessarily a mirror. Full
it's repetition.
As I would say, it's not a chiasmus. It's a direct mirror.
Yeah.
Where it's not A, B, C, C, B, A.
We're not reflecting this. We're repeating it. We're going to do this
exactly.
again. Which is another story. You can do that to good effect in storytelling.
Yeah.
Which is what I would argue Rian Johnson was trying to do, where he was taking episode 7 and going, okay.
Which is honestly going to make episode 9 very interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued to see if they're going to continue with that, if they're going to try and push that back towards episode 6, or if they're going to... Because what JJ was doing was basically trying to reassure people, this is what you know. Like, we know what, we're giving you Star Wars like you like, not what George did with the prequels. And then Rian Johnson saying, okay, but we can't just repeat ourselves, so let's use the repetition we've already established and use that in a literary way to establish some very significant contrasts. Mm-hmm. And so I am curious to see what they'll do with number 9, if we're just going to keep repeating, or if we're actually going to go somewhere new. Which is part of what Palpatine's laugh in that trailer makes me nervous about, because I'm like, if we're getting too heavily into Palpatine, that is literally just repeating ourselves.
Yeah.
Which would be the weaker option.
Just to kind of follow the thoughts that I was having earlier today, let's just move on to Empire and Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. So, at the beginning of Empire, we have Empire discovers the location of the hidden rebel base on Hoth and launches a major ground offensive against the rebels, and the rebels evacuate, which does match up with the beginning of Last Jedi.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Han escorts Leia to safely off a planet where they fall in love, which, unless you're talking about, Finn and Poe. Actually, I'm sorry. But even you get
Poe
Rose
and
Rose.
Yeah.
Poe and Rose, but even
Poe
that,
but even Finn and Rose.
Finn and Rose, yeah. I'd rather have Poe and Rose personally, but
that'd be awesome.
I actually, I kind of want that now. I kind of want that from episode 9 to give us a
super
Poe
sexy
and Rose
hero takes out the kind of shy.
It'd be a Jamie and Brienne sort of thing. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But
and again, this is just based off of this guy's list of what he pulled out and was comparing to the other episodes. So next he says, meanwhile, Luke travels to a faraway planet of Dagobah in search of a mysterious Jedi Master named Yoda. Rey has arrived at
Octu. She gets her hermit Jedi Master.
Yeah. I mean,
well, and you can frame the whole thing. We've got the Jedi training going on over here, while we've got the other plots going on over here.
Yeah.
And
later, Luke rushes off to rescue Han and Leia, who have been captured on Cloud City. Finn and Rose have been captured on...
Oh, in this case, it would be Rey returning to racing to try and convince Kylo and redeem him, which is kind of where it gets a little wonky, where we are simultaneously mirroring episode 5 and episode 6 in episode 8.
So, I mean, she is rushing off to confront Kylo, but there is also the captured people, which she... I guess she doesn't really have... There's no effect.
That's not a capture. So her motivation is much more Luke in episode 6.
Right.
Where I'm going to go redeem him, and before realizing, oh, wait, he doesn't want to be redeemed.
Yeah.
No.
And then finally we have for Empire...
Which I loved. I actually did love that in episode 8.
There's a reason when even people who aren't as fond of it will highlight the whole Jedi arc as being the stronger part, because it is. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. And then just the end of Empire is on Cloud City, Darth Vader lures Luke Skywalker to him by using Han, Leia, and Chewbacca as bait. A bounty hunter escapes. A bounty hunter escape? What?
Yeah, again, that was him inserting something there to put a force.
Because I saw that one too, and I was like, really? You're stretching to the point of breaking here, man.
I'm trying to think in not Force Awakens, Last Jedi. It doesn't really directly correlate to anything solidly.
With Last Jedi with episode 5?
With Empire, yeah.
Oh,
Empire,
yeah, sure it does. Okay, so...
You have DJ, who sort of makes his escape, but he's more of a
that part
Lando,
doesn't.
Those things happen, but they don't relate to each other.
Yeah, it's not... But again, the bounty hunter escaping isn't really significant in any way. That's just him forcing a comparison. But with those, you've got the opening of we found the rebel base, we're hunting them down. We've got one plot line focusing the Jedi going to be trained, while we've got the other focusing on Empire still trying to hunt down this group, and then it does diverge a little further from there, where you've got Finn and Rose going off and doing additional stuff in addition to the rebels being chased down, and you've got Rey and Luke going through, although it's a shorter period of time, decidedly more than Luke and Yoda did, and And so, but then you've still got the fleeing from the Empire storyline next to the Jedi being trained storyline, and then the coming back to rescue the fleeing. The fleeing ones get captured, and we're coming back to rescue them. Whereas in this case, it's more the fleeing ones. That's where it starts to diverge a lot, because again, what he was doing here was setting this up to mirror so that we could then go in different directions.
And if you want to look at it as Rey is coming back to rescue the Resistance people,
it's like I said, with Rey, it's Rey is coming back to redeem Kylo.
But then she is pivotal in that rescue.
She is pivotal in the rescue in the end, which still doesn't really mirror Luke though, because Luke was pivotal to their rescue in that. Well, the whole point of having them here was so that Luke would come. Luke has come. I'm not really paying attention to them, so they have a chance to get out on their own, or rather because Lando turned heel and decided to join the goodies. But whereas in this, and then Luke gets rescued by them, whereas Rey is, I'm going to go try and redeem him. That doesn't work, so I will go and clear the way for them to get out, while Luke does the actual rescuing of them. And so it starts out very strongly correlative, but the further you get towards the end, the less correlative it gets, I would say, which was the point of what he was trying to do with taking the repetition of episode 7 and saying, now let's turn this into a specific branching off.
Episode 8 felt to me like a combination of episode 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you if you squish 5 and 6 together and then use 8 as a comparison to both of those, how does that hold up?
Well, and so
because
if you're
then
comparing,
you get much more mirroring, like especially with the whole I'm going to go and redeem him.
Yes,
there's a little divergence at the end, but not really, like.
Well, and that's part of why I feel like I don't know if this is giving Rian Johnson too much credit, but I almost feel it might be. I almost feel like he was going, well, the story that JJ did for episode 7 was very heavily repetitive. And what they gave me to work with for episode 8 is also very repetitive. I don't want episode 9 to just be them repeating episode 6, so you know what? I'm just going to do all the repeating episode 6 here, and then I'm going to take it in different directions so that when they get episode 9, they don't have a choice. They won't be able to repeat this anymore if they're good storytellers. I almost feel like that's what he was doing, but...
Do you think, though, that Rey would still be on the redemption kick like Luke was? Because that's kind of been my thought, is Rey is still going to be trying to turn Kylo back good.
I think she will.
Maybe. Like, again, we had a whole episode discussing this where it's like, well, we don't know. I could see it both ways. Like, I could see her still being on that, but at the same time, I could see that whole closing of the ship and as more of a breaking off, and we are now officially not, this is not a thing I'm trying for anymore. That could go either way and not be athematic either way, so... Side note, I think I just invented that word and I'm pretty happy with it. Athematic.
Would it be at all useful to the discussion to compare what we do have here for Return of the Jedi with what we think may happen in Rise of Skywalker?
I would propose that if we have mirroring between episode 6 and episode 9, if we have repetition rather, it would center around Palpatine. Mm-hmm. That it would be some secret reveal, some really dumb reveal that Palpatine was behind this all along, and now we have to defeat him, similar to the end of episode 6.
I hope not.
And it turns out that because a lot of people have been latching on to Kylo's line from Force Awakens, where he's talking to Vader's helmet and saying, "Show me the true power of the dark side," or whatever he says that line where he's like, "Show me again."
Show me the power, yeah.
And which implies that Vader has shown him something, which people are saying, oh, it was actually the Emperor luring him, pretending to be Darth Vader, luring him to the dark side. It was the Emperor behind all this all along, which then just inserts him into the subordinate apprentice position that we just barely got him out of in a very dramatic fashion in the last one with Palpatine, which I think is why a lot of people are latching onto this, because what they want is the familiar. Like, I have a guy that I'm friends with on Facebook who was complaining about the sequels, and he's like, what they should have done, but his complaint was that they weren't repetitive enough. He was like, they should have basically just lifted the plot and done it all over again. And I was like, are you serious? Who are you? But the thing is, he's not alone in that. There's a lot of people who just want that comfort food of just do it all again. Just give us this, even if it's literally the same villain, just give us the big bad. Give us the easy resolutions and the good triumphing over evil and just be done with it. I don't think they'll go that way, but I think that would be the most likely mirroring with what little we've got, at least. And in that case, we would be mirroring, probably inevitably, we're going to have to mirror Leia with Yoda, because Leia's got to die right at the beginning of this movie, because we don't have enough of her.
I'm not even sure that she doesn't even have to die, but she just has to be made irrelevant to the rest of the story.
Yeah, but this is Star Wars, so I'd say most likely she's going to die. Yeah. But then again, if she dies and she doesn't come back as a Force ghost with Luke at some point, then that's kind of disappointing too. But.
See, well, and I feel like, just from what we have seen from the trailer, I feel like Leia's going to be... She's going to set down on a planet somewhere, run the Resistance, while Rey,
maybe
Finn and Poe... Gosh, I cannot say those names.
Rayfo.
While they go off and do other Jedi Resistance things.
Wait a minute. Why can't she just hook up with both? Let's just do it. Let's just ship all three of them. Let's get Rose in there. Ray froze.
Nice.
Wow.
Well done. As far as what he has listed for Return of the Jedi, and I think actually could even be possibilities, because I mean he has things like, well, Ewoks fight against, the Empire and things, and a speeder chase. I mean, well, we do have the chase.
When he was correlating this to episode 1, correlating the speeder chase to the pod race is not a bad correlation, I would say.
Yeah.
Even if it is
incidental.
But
little
as far
wonky,
as what we're likely to see in Rise of Skywalker, I mean, you could do a speeder chase.
We did see those Quidditch troopers.
Yeah.
There's a chase in the middle there.
Quidditch troopers.
You haven't heard them called that? Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite name for them.
I said, didn't we use that in the episode?
Oh my goodness!
I think it was mentioned.
Wow, that's
anyway,
fantastic.
But now there are.
I don't even like Harry Potter. That's great.
There are a couple plot points, like Luke leaves his friends to face Darth Vader and become a Jedi. We'll probably see something similar.
Yeah,
I would think.
Yeah, except we've already kind of seen that, though. I mean, when she is like, "Okay, peace out, everybody. I'm going to go get him back."
Well, but part of that plot point in Jedi was that Luke was kind of proving to himself that he's a Jedi.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what Rey needs to do as well.
I think that Rey definitely is still at a point where she could use some proving that to herself, even if she has stepped into actually trying to be that. And having Rey reach a point where she's confident in that would definitely be thematically appropriate. If rather repetitive, and I wouldn't mind if they skipped over it just to not repeat.
Or at least, do it more quickly.
Or maybe that could be what her scene with Leia is at the beginning, is Leia just being like, you're a Jedi. I'm the closest thing we got to make it official.
It's true.
That's true. But, oh, boy.
I don't know. And in trying to think through the rest of Jedi and what we could potentially see for Rise of Skywalker, I'm not sure if there really are too many parallels.
Well, I mean, the most likely situation here is that Palpatine has secretly been alive or undead the whole time and has had some people reconstructing Starkiller Base somewhere else.
On a bigger planet.
Yeah, actually underneath that wreckage of the Death Star is a secret Starkiller Base that they've been building into this either Yavin 4 or Moon of Endor.
Yeah.
And that's what's really going on here.
Oh, boy.
Oh, golly.
Although, for Chiasmus, we could have the movie end with her restoring the Jedi Order, like a big school. Just like in episode 1, there's already an organization.
Yeah.
I feel like
I wouldn't mind seeing an actual school of that.
I would too, actually.
But I feel like that would be a little bit... It's kind of a moot point because Luke already tried that and only had a dozen. So how could we get a really large scale Jedi
No, well, even if it were only a dozen, it would be...
I also kind of like the feel of like maybe going with, we're not going to establish this as a centralized order, maybe more of a traveling like Ronin sort of... She travels around teaching people and then leaves them there to find their way.
That won't go wrong at all.
Well, it can't go any worse than the last couple attempts at being at the Jedi Order have, so... I also had occurred to me this week that the whole thing about, Skywalkers are going to be what replaces the Jedi and everything. I don't like that theory.
Oh, really?
I like the idea that the new head of the Jedi Order is the Skywalker, the one who's traveling around establishing these mini schools or whatever.
The sky.
Yeah, it's the Skywalker. But replacing the Jedi with Skywalkers is pointless if you don't actually have some like actually well thought out and expressed in the movie differences between what the Skywalkers are and what the Jedi are, which I feel like they don't have much time for with everything else that they've got going.
You would have to basically devote the entire next movie to that.
Yeah, and it's too much, and it also would specifically contrast with one of the last things Luke told us, which is that he is not the last Jedi. Like, that's literally one of the last things he says in the film, is that, is basically him acknowledging that he was wrong to want to eradicate the Jedi Order.
And also, Rey loves the Jedi. She idolizes them. She wants to live up to the best myths and legends of the Jedi.
Well,
She's going to want to do the name honor. She's not going to get rid of the Jedi.
Unless the little talk she had with Luke, she really sits and thinks about and starts to agree with.
But again, that thematically, that wouldn't work with the end of Return of the Jedi, where the end of Return of Jedi is saying, nope, Jedis are good.
Yeah.
So, and specifically, she's the next one. Like,
Yeah.
well, so yeah, there's, I mean, I guess to wrap up, there are a lot of similarities. There's a lot of deliberate echoing, deliberate callbacks. Usually when Star Wars does its callbacks, it is to pretty good intent. Like, sometimes there's a difference between just doing a callback to make a callback and have the audience go, oh, hey, I recognize the reference.
Yeah.
And doing a callback to a specific thematic purpose.
Exactly.
And Star Wars, both George and his successors have all done a pretty decent job at making their callbacks thematically resonant, I feel.
Yep.
But I don't feel like necessarily we've got any deliberate chiasmusing on our hands.
Yeah. I think overall that's where I'd have to come down. I think whatever chiasmusing is happening was just incidental.
Yeah.
So.
And then hopefully we'll break away from even the repetition with episode 9 and get into some really new territory that says something new. But
And then in like 10 years after Rian Johnson has done his trilogy, we'll compare chiasmus between his and D&D. Yeah, exactly.
Because they're clearly going to be working closely together.
Oh, man. Craziness.
Well, or Ryan could take it as the easy way out. Just take whatever D&D make and just
intentionally do it.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I could see him doing something extremely thematically resonant with something, but I kind of suspect he'll go a new direction, given that was basically what he was trying to force with Last Jedi.
He'll go one direction. I don't know.
We're going to get One Direction in Star Wars soon.
No.
We're going to get them inserted.
Ed Sheeran was dumb enough in Game of Thrones.
We're going to get them inserted as a musical number in the cantina scene in episode 7.
Exactly. Oh, man. Okay, well, is that it then? Does anybody else have anything to say?
I don't think I have anything else to add.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to say either. I mean, that was a good discussion.
Exhausted most of my tangents.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
wow.
There we go.
How about that, guys? You heard it. We got through all of our tangents today. Wow.
And our tangents were on topic.
They were.
Mostly.
Yeah. Except for the ones you're going to cut.
Pare down. I don't really directly cut most anything.
Oh, boy. Well, in that case, please follow us on Twitter, @MoreCivilized. And let us know, go read this article for yourself and let us know what you think. Let us know if you think it was intentional or if you agree with us or whatever.
Yeah, if you actually get in and actually read and study the whole thing and then you find errors in our
come
skimming,
slam us. Yeah. Tell us where we're wrong. And then also join our Facebook group, A More Civilized Podcast. There's so much good Star Wars.
We have been memeing
funny
so
going on.
Recently.
Oh, man. Some of those have been so good. Yeah. I've posted a couple that I thought were pretty funny.
Well, even Chris got in and posted something.
Yeah, I did. I usually don't get on there often enough to find anything before someone else has already found it and posted it in the group.
Yeah.
But I had a couple times this week where I was just scrolling through my feed and found some Star Wars memes and was like, hey, nobody's sharing that. I usually, or the other thing that happens is I'll scroll through my feed and just assume anything Star Wars related is coming from the group. And so this time I actually paid enough attention to know, wait, that wasn't the group. All right, let me share that.
And on that note, our shout out this week goes to Lindsay for creating her own set of memes to share around.
She created all of those? Oh, I just assumed she collected those.
They have our little hashtag in there and everything.
Nice.
Hashtag More Civilized Podcast.
Sweet.
There were a couple that I was just like, dang, that's funny.
I mean,
I was so proud. She put that on there. I made me so happy.
That was definitely an AMCP inside joke.
Yep.
But yeah.
That's how we weed the wheat from the tares.
I think that means we have another milestone. We now have in jokes.
Yep.
So
it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we need to put that on a shirt though. He Han Solo'd your Greedo face.
I also realize we don't have one that says #adequate either.
I know.
We don't.
I need to do that.
We're only adequate.
It's true. The irony.
I want one that says I am the podcast.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to me, you can catch me on Twitter @Mr_R_star.
Yes. Please let us know on either Twitter or Facebook if you have any ideas for episodes, anything you'd like to hear us cover. We'd love to have more content.
As this episode has proven.
Yes.
This is literally from at least 2 of you.
Yes.
So
And, of course, let us know if this is, I haven't said this in a while, but if there's anywhere you can't find the podcast that you want to. And, go out and share it with your friends. We want more listeners.
Yep.
We want more people to tell us how wrong we are about things.
Yep. Because I don't get enough of that from you two.
We all do that to each other. I mean, really, we're very good at rebuttaling each other, I think.
Well,
we're as diverse as three white guys in mid-Utah can be.
And I was just going to say, we could use more. Honestly,
three white guys whose birthdays are all within a month of each other.
Oh boy. Well, until next time, we're going to leave you guys alone, and may the force be with you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.
Are you guys alone?
Yeah. Actually spilled my water all over me like an infant. Shoot! I'm cutting my own legs off.
Hey, one more arm and you can get a cool robot.
I know, right? And 877-5309.
867.
867, son of a whore! I thought I had that right! Ah!
Pause.
Sorry.
We just need to get a better table is what we need to do.
Yep.
Which is the plan for when we move. It'll still be a folding table,
But not a card
but
table.
not a 30, no, actually probably 40 or 50-year-old kind of table.
Not a table that's older than the three of us.
I mean, kind of.
Everybody clap your hands.
That will make no sense if I leave that in.
Just throw it in at the end. Who cares?
That's actually a good place for it. Starting again. But no, I feel like.
You can cut that out, Ross.
Yeah. The look on Ross's face. That's great.
I was thinking, not on VidAngel you won't.
It's true. Oh, you're going to have to cut that whole...
Yeah. No, leave it. It's great.
And this also will not make the end credits.